Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am Celeste Wong. I am one of the features programmers for SF DocFest. Super excited to be here today in conversation with They're Here co-directors, Pacho Velez and Daniel Claridge. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So I love the film. It has really stuck with me. And just congratulations on making a really unique and very moving and very entertaining film. I want to just start at the beginning. If you could just let us know like where this idea came to you and how the documentary came together.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, God, I think we had the idea for the film probably like around 2020. I don't know if folks remember, but there's kind of a flurry of like UFO in the news activity. There was some disclosure about a secret Pentagon program, and there was the release of all these crazy like UFO videos that the Navy had captured off the coast of San Diego. And I think we were both comparing notes and just realized that we'd been having a lot of conversations with friends about UFOs. And so it felt like there were kind of two things going on. There was a kind of high level discussion that was changing, but there was also a shift in the conversation where it suddenly felt like there was renewed attention. It was like on people's mind. It was also COVID. So people were, they had a lot of extra time on their hands, and it turns out they were seeing more UFOs. And I think Patra and I, we don't like fashion ourselves investigative journalists. I think we've always been interested in the kind of human side of this story. And so I think from the very beginning we knew that we were interested in yeah, what it feels like to have seen a UFO, how it may change your life in small or large ways. We kind of always joked that this was not a film about the astronomical questions. This was a film about the kind of psychological questions. Um, and that was really, I mean, that was really the impetus to go out and start to meet people and chat and find the folks that ultimately kind of live on screen in the film.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm really glad you put it that way because that really comes across. One of the things I really love the most about the film is that it has this really human approach, very non-judgmental approach um, to just sharing the participants' experiences. And I'm wondering if you just how you built that trust with the participants, how you created that kind of openness and a place. An environment for them to feel safe to share what they shared, and if you ever came across any like concerns that they had about the film.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, um, the sort of there's there's no like magic sauce for finding people to film. It's sort of it's legwork and also just sort of finding people that you enjoy spending time with, and then like putting in the hours. Like I can't tell you how many times we road tripped from New York up to Rochester, 7 hours there and back to sort of go to a conference, or you go, celebrate a birthday, or just all this stuff that like is the sort of the kind of pedestrian work of documentary filmmaking. Um, just relationship building and hanging out with folks. And what makes it sort of possible is that Dan and I really like all these people, and that was a big part of the people that we chose to sort of profile. Was that we like, we really sort of connected with them as people. And it's fun to go to Twan's comedy shows, and it's fun to go like hang out with Steve, and go get a cheeseburger, and just all this sort of stuff, and go to Cookie's group, and like they all go to Applebee's afterwards and have a beer, and they all like share notes on JFK and the JFK assassination. And these are all like sort of like fun things to do and fun worlds to be inside of. And and that's really sort of what makes it possible. It's like the thing that the audience is feeling on the screen is a reflection of how Dan and I feel about these people and our sort of warmth and, you know, the appreciation of them for letting us into their, you know, slightly eccentric worlds. We, in terms of like any sort of like tough conversations with the characters, trying to think if there is anything really kind of maybe my favorite story of sort of a negotiated a negotiation with the characters is Cookie's line at the end of the film. So first of all, we, you know, obviously we have a few sci-fi or like special effects sequences in the film, and that's stuff we did very late in the project when we had built a lot of trust and people were sort of ready to sort of take that leap with us and sort of trust us that when we say like, no, it's going to be cool when you get, you know, levitated, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's give it a whirl. Inside of that, we obviously, well, we wanted it to feel, documentary is not quite the word, but we wanted it to feel true to their experiences. And so Cookie is somebody who's been abducted multiple times. That's Cookie's reality. And that's what we were working with here. And so we were like, okay, Cookie, like, how would this work? And she's like, well, the ship comes overhead, and then you get sort of levitated out through the wall. We couldn't quite manage that, so we had Steve go outside, but we still, the sort of the sense of being levitated was important to us. And one thing we asked was Cookie, like, what, you know, what would you say to Steve if a ship was overhead right now? Like, not, you know, not like movie land, whatever, but like this was really happening in your world, like in your life at this moment. What would you say? And Cookie said, I would say, I think they're here, Steve. We said, okay, amazing. So when the moment comes, we want you to say that line. And so we, you know, we filmed everything else, and we got to Cookie's close up, and we pointed the camera at Cookie, and we said, okay, Cookie, now it's time to say your line. And Cookie was like, what's my line again? And we're like, your line is, I think they're here, Steve. And Cookie said, no, I would never say that. We're like, okay, what would you say, Cookie? And she's like, I would say they're here, Steve, because I don't think they're here. I know they're here. And we're like, all right, cool. Let's go with that. And so that was a kind of negotiated moment inside the film.
That's
That makes it better.
amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That's how you got the title, I
That's how we
assume?
got the title. That's how we got that line. That sort of amazing performance.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you about those sequences, so I'm glad you brought that up. And also just in the greater context of the whole aesthetic of the film, because it's really well, um, it's, I mean, well, yeah, it's really atmospheric, and I think those aesthetic qualities come through, you know, the sort of like touch of I don't know if you call it magical realism or whatever you want to call it, but those touches come through even just in the sound design or little aesthetic choices. So yeah, I wonder if you could talk more about creating that whole aesthetic, that whole vibe and texture to the film.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliments. We you know, that there's a funny way in which, like, whenever you make like even a documentary about UFOs, you're sort of like you always end up talking about like fiction movies. It's sort of the way that people like sort of the way that people communicate their experience. A lot of times it's like, you know, I saw this craft and it shot off like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or it's part of the language. And so we just early on realized like we were interested in this kind of space that was somewhere between fiction and documentary, that was firmly a documentary, but was using some of the language of fiction, and was obviously like referencing some of these movies that are so canonical and such a part of the consciousness. And so yeah, we really like we chose to. I realize my video seems to keep going out, but you'll endure my voice without the video for a moment. Sorry about that. But we really tried to shoot it in this kind of controlled way. We would film something like 1 or 2 scenes a day, and we were really deliberate about, we'd kind of create the circumstances in which a scene would unfold, but it was a kind of way to control the look and feel of the movie. And the the recreations at the end, or the kind of fantasy sequences, really came out of a series of conversations with people, where at some point we were reflecting kind of late in the game and realized that at some point, every one of our subjects had expressed a kind of specific desire to be taken in a particular kind of way. And it was sort of fun to work with people to imagine exactly how that would go, whether it was on, Twan's rooftop or in front of Cookie's house. And I think we were pretty untroubled thinking about this film as, as a documentary, but a documentary about internal experience and about fantasy and about imagination. And kind of in that context, I think we thought about those final sequences as a kind of expression of wish fulfillment, whether or not it was a kind of literal truth. And so that was kind of how a lot of, that was kind of how the recreation elements at the end came about. I will log off and log back in and try to get my video back. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Really?
Thank you for doing that. The
Just
audio
inside
came
of
through
it.
great, so
Okay, cool. You can imagine me gesticulating. Okay.
yeah.
Uh, and just sort of, inside of that world, like there's like a sort of fundamental difference in like the worldview that Dan and I have and the worldview of Cookie, say, where like for Cookie, like UFO visits are like absolutely a fact of life. They happen all the time.
Mhm.
Dan and I have never had an experience that we would sort of characterize as a visitation, or a sighting. And so much of like documentary unfolds in the land of me and Dan, the land of like cold rationality and like, and like, work a day, just sort of just the material reality. And we thought it would be fun if we sort of made a documentary that was a documentary about Cookie's world. It wasn't about our world. It was about a world where UFOs really do, visit Rochester all the time. Who are we to say that Cookie's reality is invalid? It's sort of, so it was a fun chance for us to kind of like animate that point of view or that world and give it substance, inside of our documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious now that so you premiered at Tribeca last year, and it's been on its festival journey. Um, Congratulations, by the way. But yeah, I'm curious what the reception has been, because I can imagine that there's just that those different beliefs or experiences are reflected in the audience as well. So I'm curious, like, what you've heard.
Some people are like, where is the interview with Lou Elizondo? And like, like you need to like where are the Air Force pilots? Like, where's the like the hidden like secret like camera button footage inside of the CIA, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like the stuff that we're just like, that's just not what we do. And even, as no matter how much we say it, like there's always like maybe 10% of the audience who have shown up for that. Um, but I mean, I'd say everyone else, has been really excited by our approach, and if people who like people, I think, enjoy our movie.
Well,
Um,
folks often want to know where they can buy the Steve's board game, Euphoria.
yeah, it's for sale. It's
So,
out there
so
in the
this is
world.
an elaborate advertisement for the Euphoria board game.
But yeah, just these different, yeah, just the kind of the fact that it's about humans and relationships, and workaday world. I think there's a lot that's like really relatable inside of it. When Steve's talking about like, spending 25 years like welding metal widgets, and it's like, yeah, everyone who's ever like had to work a job they don't love can relate to that feeling, you know. And so there's a lot of like that kind of just stuff, or like, Dave having to work at the gas station, like, who hasn't had a summer job doing something like that, where it's just like, and you spend the time chit-chatting with your coworkers, and maybe, imagining UFO visits, because it's sort of, it's fun, and it distracts you from the daily grind a little bit.
Yeah, and I know I really resonated with like just that desire for connection and for belief that there's something else out there. It's such a beautiful moment at the end, the therapy session with Dave. Um, and I'm curious if you can just talk a little bit. Like you've mentioned a little bit about building these close relationships with everyone, including Dave, I imagine. But it's a really, really intimate moment, and therapy in general is such a personal thing. I'm curious if you could talk about what it was like to um, just film that moment, what it felt like.
Yeah. I mean that as you can probably imagine came fairly late in the process. And I think with Dave it was like it was a real journey. I mean, we met Dave because he had posted on a subreddit dedicated to UFO sightings his video at the park, and he'd been kind of excoriated for his video. And actually, the local news, as you see in the film, had done a piece and a little bit like mocked him, or he felt that way. And I think like with Dave, he really appreciated the chance to be heard out in a kind of longer form. And so I think that was the foundation of our relationship with Dave, was that there was a lot of trust and a lot of just time spent talking about things beyond just the UFO sighting, hanging out at the car wash, meeting his family, getting to know his brother and sister and his mom. And I think, Dave expressed an interest early on in doing hypnotic regression therapy, which is what you see in the film. And so when it came time in his journey when he felt ready to do that, I think part of what we loved about a lot of our characters, and Dave especially, was there was a kind of open-heartedness and a desire to share on screen what this process was like and what their journey was like. I think I think of another moment in the film that's also a hypnosis moment where Steve is undergoing hypnotic regression, and he can't in the process like visualize any of his experiences. And I know that Pacha and I were both really struck by that moment, because we both felt like this is a moment when it would be really pretty easy to kind of just make something up, either for yourself or for the film. But Steve didn't, and there was a kind of integrity to that we really admired. And so I think with both Dave and Steve, there was an openness and integrity about their experience that we we loved, we wanted to share, and that we were so appreciative that they were willing to share with us.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that moment because I think that they do, yeah, it probably could have been easy for you as filmmakers to like cut that part out, but they do work really well together to illustrate what you just said, that same open-heartedness.
Right.
Have Cookie, Steve, Twan, Dave, have they seen the film? What was their reaction to it? How are they doing?
Most folks came down to the premiere. Steve was there, Dave and Tuan and Victoria, they were all there. Um, and they had a great time. They got to be part of the Q&A at the end. Tuan like took the mic and managed to turn it into like a little bit of a stand-up session. He got off some pretty good jokes, so he was pretty happy with that. Um, we invited Cookie down, but there was this whole sort of complicated, like Cookie's amazing, but also like she's a diva, and as she should be. And that was like the day of the premiere was the state of New York had some kind of like program to give people new storm windows for their houses. And she was like, I just, I would love to come and see your movie, guys, but I got to get my new storm windows. And I just, this is the day that they can come. And we're like, all right, Cookie, like, you gotta, first things first, we got you. So she hasn't seen it with an audience yet, but we showed her, we went up and showed it to her one-on-one. And she enjoyed it. I'm not sure she like totally was like, I think she was hoping that we would sort of uncover who built the pyramids a little bit or something. But but she respected her depiction in the film, and enjoyed seeing her world on screen, I think.
Cool. Well, how can folks keep up with the film if they want to keep up with the film's journey or just spread the word? Is there a social media or website folks can go to?
Not yet. It's playing a few more festivals, which is a great way to see it. And then we are, we're hoping that we'll, find a form of distribution in the coming months. Some of it may be our own distribution. But we definitely look forward to getting the film out there and sharing it with audiences.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you both so much for this conversation. Thank you both for sharing
And
your film with us. Yeah,
it's just
go
worth
ahead.
saying that if people want to get in touch, probably at PachoWorks on Instagram is probably the easiest way to do it. Ampersand PACHOWORKS. So
Awesome. Thank you for shouting that out. Pacho Works. Yeah, keep in touch, spread the word. Thank you both so much. And thanks to everyone watching.
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.